going on, guys? Welcome to mikeybalzz Fishing. Bog, what do you got? Is there a Guggen coming over here? I got a cool video planned for you. One of the things I love to do is sight fishing. Sight fishing is such an intense deal. You're looking at the fish, you're kind of going one-on-one, you're figuring out what's working, what are they reacting, and you see their behavior. I think something that at least I'm really interested in as an angler is how fish behave when I make a presentation to them. And sight fishing literally is that in real time. I guess with like active target coming out and that, we're gonna see more of that because we'll be able to see them on the graph in real time, kind of how they act when you throw a bait at them. But sight fishing, you can see what those fish are thinking, you can kind of assume things, you can see their behavior. It's a cool deal, and you can catch some bigs. Now, let me throw this in. Today is not the ideal sight fishing day. It is windy, as you can see. It's kind of cloudy. Not ideal conditions. Usually for sight fishing, you want clear, sunny days, maybe a little chop on the water, but nothing too bad because you can play different parts of the lake. You can go where the wind isn't blowing that hard. But sight fishing is a lot about being able to see, having a good pair of glasses, having the right water conditions. So it's not an ideal day, but I'm gonna walk you through kind of the steps and process that I use because we're going into spring. A lot of you guys, it's still cold, it's still pre-spawn, but it's something that you need to think about because one of the cool things about the spawn is it happens kind of when you least expect it. Like, all of a sudden one day you're fishing pre-spawn, you're catching them like staging, on a break, you know, outside, out deep, and then they're gone. And you go look in 6 inches of water and they're there, dude. So you have to be ready to kind of turn that switch and turn that button on and get up there and look at these fish and catch them. Like, it could be a fun time, and you can catch some of the biggest fish of the year doing it. So come along with me. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Let's pet Bog's butt real quick. You like a butt rub? I know you like a butt rub. Thank you guys for supporting the videos too. You guys are awesome. This is grassroots content. Literally, it gets ahead in the algorithm because of you, because YouTube doesn't like it. But let's go fishing. Let's go learn some sight fishing. Bitch. Got her. It's a nice little 3.5, 4 pounder. She took some work though, dude. She ran off with it a couple times. Oh, relax. I'm gonna let her go though. That was a nice little spawning fish. She made me work though. There's no doubt about it. See ya. So let's talk quick about the process of actually finding them. You know, we found some in the canals today, and that's a real dialed in place in Florida to look for them. But a lot of times we have to go to the main lake to look for them, and maybe on your lake you don't have canals or ditches or things along those lines. One of the key factors that I use is I look for something that's either isolated, kind of like that pad stalk right there, or I look for something that can provide the fish kind of like a background protection. So we actually have a line of pads right here, and then there's holes in it. It seems like these fish that spawn, they like to have something behind them. It's very rare that you see, I mean, you'll see them, you'll see beds in open water, but it's very rare that you see a bigger fish on something that's totally open, 360 degrees all the way around. Usually they want something that kind of blocks one of those corners, because in the end they're in that protective mode and they're looking to sort of be as efficient as possible, and blocking off some of those corners of the bed makes the process that they're going through, that spawning process, a lot more fluid. So the other thing too is you need to identify how deep they are. On the lake we're on today, like, the water clarity goes down to about 2 or 3 foot. These fish need that sun to warm up their eggs, and basically they need it for the process. They need it for the spawning process. So that light penetration really defines where they're at. If you're on a super clear body of water, Dude, they could be like 4-8. I know Benjamin Nowak, my buddy, go check him out. Benjamin Nowak's awesome, dude. But he catches smallmouth in like 8 to 10 feet of water on beds. Absolute insanity. The water's that clear, they spawn out deeper. And sometimes you will even find too, not all fish on your lake are to spawn in the same place. Some spawn deeper, bigger fish maybe later on spawn because the water's cooler down deeper, so it takes a while for that water to warm up. So it's something you gotta kind of dial in. Usually the earliest fish will spawn shallow because it warms up the fastest. And sometimes, at least what I found in Florida, is the earliest fish that you find spawning are usually the biggest fish too. Got her. Dude, that's the way you want to catch them. One flip, and she chows it. Man, when they're right. We've been on like 4 fish and have not been able to get them to bite. We came around this corner on this dock, and there was like a 4 or 5 pounder sitting there, dude. One flip, but let's get her back. You always want to get them back really quick when they're on beds. Just a nice one. Let's let her go. Oh, you were so angry. It's crazy though how they can be so, some of them can be so ready to go, and some of them can be just so moody that you got to draw them onto the bed. I'm pretty sure that was the female. We're gonna sit here and take a look for just a second and watch, but we're gonna go look for some more. It's been a grind. I'm trying to force it to happen because I really wanna do some sight fishing. I really enjoy that kind of fishing, that one-on-one kind of feel, like approach. But man, they're so close, yet they're so far away from being like ready and locked on. So let's break down how we approach a bed. So we got a bed right at that, see those little pads right there? There's a small bed right there with a little buck on it. So I have 2 setups whenever I'm fishing beds. Basically, one is a braid setup, a 40-pound braid, and the other is fluorocarbon. Whenever I can get away with it, I go with the braid. You know, you have to judge based on the water you're on and the size of fish that you're dealing with. You might have a spinning rod with braid to fluorocarbon. You might have 12-pound fluorocarbon, 10-pound fluorocarbon. You got to kind of play it by what your water has, size of fish, as well as cover. And cover is a big deal here too, because literally if I hook this fish, it's going to run into the pads, and I've had my heart broken more than once by trying to use fluorocarbon in situations when I should not be using fluorocarbon. But the first thing that I do on a bed is I make sure I pitch it past it. So I'll pitch it past it, and I'll reel the bait back. Let me shake it right through there, and then I'll let it sit on the bed. It's really important, I think, to let the bait sit on the bed for the first part. Florida fish are renowned for being the most moody bed fish ever. And when I let the bait sit on the bed, I'm not being super obtrusive, but I'm also getting a feel for what the fish do. So I can look at this fish and see, is he reacting? Is he not doing anything? Like, what's actually happening? And then based upon that, I can either get more aggressive or stay pretty passive, so pretty subtle. And that's really the trick. You need to figure out if these fish are just coming onto the bed, they're kind of passive, if they're locked onto the bed and they're super aggressive and you can literally hit them. That was the crazy thing I figured out on Guntersville last year, that you could hit fish to trigger them to bite. But once I kind of figure out what mood they're in, I'm gonna screw this fish up, but I wanna show you guys kind of some of the approaches that I use. The second thing I'll do, if I think this fish is kind of aggressive, is I'll pitch by, I'll bring the bait into the bed, and then I don't use the rod. A lot of guys use the rod, I use the line. And I grab the line and I flick twitch it. I mean, you'll see it in some of the chesty footage from catching some of these guys, but I will flick it. And basically what that does is it causes the bait to kind of move back and forth, but it doesn't cause the bait to move, to actually move, like to shift position, because you want to keep it in the bed. So I'll just kind of, you know, boom, boom, boom. You kind of feel the report of the bait too as you do. No, all right. So then the other thing is, I thought you mouthed it there for a second. So I'm gonna bring it back in. So say this fish is, oops, I screwed up. Let me That's the other thing. You really got to have your pitching game down for this, because unless you're casting to them, usually they're around, like we said, like something's behind them and it's a little tricky to get to them. So the other thing that I'll do, if you got a fish that's outside the bed and not coming in, or you got a fish on a bed where you put your bait on there and it doesn't react, one thing I will do is this, guy. I will slam that rod. I don't know what the hell it is, dude, but it will either scare that fish off the bed or it will piss them off immensely. There's some kind of weird vibration that aggressive rod shake in the line causes. It happens with fluorocarbon and it happens with braid. But dude, that bait does something. I should probably get an underwater video of it, but that bait does something, and those fish either scooch or, dude, I've had like, actually this year, I didn't catch her, I screwed it up. I had a 7-pounder, dude, that was outside the bed, swing around, get on the bed and come and look at my bait. But then I did it again and she darted. So it draws their attention, but you got to be really careful with using it because it's a fairly aggressive approach. Now, something that we do not do in Florida, but works really well on Guntersville, is the hit the fish technique. So you pitch it in there and you'll basically kind of reel your bait and you'll see that fish and boom, you hit the fish, and then you bring it on through. What'll happen too sometimes is you'll find these jokers will actually follow the bait without even hitting the fish, and all you're doing is you're really like swimming your soft plastic or your lure through the bed. That was interesting. That might actually work here. But I found in Florida it's not too good to hit the fish. It usually spooks them off and they disappear for like 3 hours, if they even come back. In Guntersville and on the TVA, or maybe it's a northern strain thing, you hit those jokers and they're like, hit me again, I'll fight you, you know, and it's freaking awesome, and I can hit fish and catch them. Please don't use that technique. I want to catch a bunch of fish up there doing it this year. So that's another thing that I'll do. The last ditch effort, if you think the fish is super passive and like they're real tweaky, like when you pitched it in there, the fish darted off, you didn't move the bait, and she gradually kind of wallowed back, dude, just leave it in there. Like, point your rod. We're a little close for this one, but you kind of just like leave a little bit of a bow in your line like this, and you kind of point your rod forward and just watch your line. The thing with bedfish is a lot of times you don't feel them bite. Sometimes you do feel the tick, but a lot of times they'll pick up the bait and you'll see your line just swimming, and your line didn't jump, it didn't do anything, dude. And all of a sudden your line's like 10 foot to the right, and you set the hook and you caught her, which is awesome. Like, if they're that moody, just dead sticking the bait, and your main goal is to frustrate them. Whether it's frustrating them by being stubborn and patient, or frustrating them by making the bait aggressive and sort of triggering them, that's really the art of bed fishing, and that's what you have to figure out each fish each time. So rigging this up, it's a pretty simple rig. It's a Texas rig. I got a 1/4 ounce weight right there, Hog Tech, and a 4/0 owner wide gap plus, and then I just rig up a creature bait or whatever I'm going to use, just Texas rig style. If it's a thicker bait, this is a pretty thin profile bait, so I don't pass the hook through. But if you do have a thicker bait with the tube, I actually skin hook the bait, so I actually bring it through. But on my braid setup, you know, I'm going to get a pretty good hook set, so I don't have to worry about it too much. Got him. Don't come off. Got you. Dude, I've sat on this fish for like, it's only like 4 pounds, but I've sat on this fish for probably like 2 hours, man. Just a beautiful, beautiful bass. All right, let's let her go. We're gonna wrap this video up. I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little bit disappointed. I've been struggling to catch, like I said in the beginning of the video, one of my favorite things to do is bed fish. It's almost like fishing on the graph, but in real time, and I think it's so cool to go one-on-one with those fish, and I was hoping to catch a big one. I've been on, over the past week, we've had very variable weather, and over the past week, I've seen an 8+, a 7+, and another 6, and they've all been just a hair off the bed, and usually I can kind of trigger them and get them to come on the bed. I've failed miserably. I was trying to shoot you guys an epic big fish bed video, and balls failed. Yeah, he ate the big one. So it happens to all of us. It's one of those things, you can't force it in fishing. You know, if you tournament fish, or even if you just fish, you know, on the weekends or do whatever, you know just as well as I, if you found some pattern or you're trying to implement some pattern, sometimes it just don't work, and the best thing to do is let it go. But we did find a few on beds today, and it was kind of a cool challenge to catch them in these sort of adverse conditions, the wind, the clouds, and that. But what I want to do to wrap up the video, Bog, are you ready for dinner? Yeah, you're so tired. You ready? We'll go through baits real quick. I want to go through baits. Setups are, you know, just as a note, setups are going to vary a lot. You know, if you have super clear water, you're going to use lighter line. If you don't have cover, you're probably not going to use braid. Ideally though, if you can, use braid. Braid is the best, and I'm not talking about with a leader. If you have to do it on a spinning rod, with like a, you know, 8, 10 pound, 12 pound test leader, that works. But if you're around any kind of cover or you can get away with it, braid for fishing bedfish is the best, because them fish bite funky. I can't tell you how many fish I've missed on fluorocarbon, and even on braid, they just seem to mouth the bait weird. Sometimes they'll grab the tail. You just usually don't get the greatest hook sets unless they're super on, like super dialed in, super locked on the bed. And braid gives you a little bit of an insurance policy. We kind of talked about it earlier, where, you know, you don't got to get the best hook set, but the no stretch kind of covers for you in that. But baits wise, it is going to vary a bit. If you're on super clear water, you're probably going to be using smaller finesse stuff. You know, if you're fishing for spots, you're going to use smaller finesse stuff. But in general, I always try to have, I think I got a bunch of them laying around, but we're on my creature bait. Well, that's an example. He bit the tail off of it. Actually, I got one rigged up. Have yourself a creature bait. It's one of the standards. This is a Gambler Stinger right here. It's got kind of like kicker tails. The nice part about some of these creature baits though is they have a thinner profile, and hook sets are a big deal with bedfish, so that hook will come out of that plastic super quick and super easy, and that's a big deal. My other one that I absolutely love, maybe it's the Wisconsinite in me, and you can see I actually got, dude, there's another one on the floor, there's another one over there, a tube. Now, size of the tube can vary. I've actually caught some big fish on Kissimmee back when I was fishing some of the one-man tournaments on like 4.5, 5-inch tubes, like big ones. And actually on Okeechobee, I got some of those. I forget what brand they were, but dude, they were like 6.5-inch tubes. They were like that wide. They're huge, but they look like a bed invader, and they intimidate, especially some of those bigger fish. You got to use bigger baits. But dude, I'm telling you, a tube works bed fishing like you wouldn't believe. There's a couple downsides to a tube though. One is its width. You do miss some fish on it. You definitely want to skin hook a tube if you use it. The other thing that you'll find too is, we talked about earlier in the video, when you're pitching or casting, precision and putting the bait on the bed in the correct place is so important. Tubes tend to do this. Woo! They tend to spin as they fall or do some weird darting stuff, which can sometimes inhibit your placement of the bait. But I don't know what it is. Shaking a tube, I think it might actually be like the tentacles, and I think air gets trapped in the tube too, so it like bubbles up. But a tube literally has caught me more bedfish than I can count. I love the creature bait. I know a lot of guys love lizards. I'm not a big lizard guy because I think it's too big. Usually on a bed bait, I want something fairly compact. Now, if that's like a little BB cricket, if that's like a cut down stick bait on a Ned rig for spots, you know, the smallmouth, we actually blind fish beds and we catch them on a Ned rig with like a little ace, like cut down to like 2.5, 3 inches. But I like more compact stuff. Sometimes though, like I said, with those bigger fish, like a big tube or a big lizard, a big creature bait, a bacon rind, things like that, that can like intimidate them more, and then they get more triggered to bite. But in general, have yourself a creature bait, whatever you like, beaver style bait, anything like that. Just make sure the body's a little bit thinner so you get good hook sets, and try yourself a tube. A tube is, I don't know what it is, but it's epically good, dude. And you can do a lot with the tube. I can like pop it up, especially if I get it hung, I can pop it. It shakes really well. It stands up on the bed usually if you get it in there right. It's just a lot of fun things you can do. The other thing that my buddy actually recommended it, and we didn't do it in the video, Chris Kingery, 44 Tackle. He's always Harris. He fishes Harris a lot. He's trying to always innovate because there's a lot of guys that bed fish up there in the canals, and doing something a little bit different is a big deal. He recommended micro jigs. That's definitely something I want to try, because I love fishing micro jigs up on the TVA for smallmouth and that, and even on some of those pressured ledge fish. But like a little ball head in 3/8 ounce, 1/4 ounce with just a little cut down skirt, it sounded like it was a cool deal. Because the other thing, JT swears by it, if you can hook a fish on a jig, the odds of them coming off are almost slim to none, especially in close quarters. Like, hooking a fish on a jig is one of the most like catch to land or hook to land ratios, even better than a Texas rig and all that. So if you can put that jig through them, you're probably going to get them in. The other one that I absolutely love, and I do have one right here, and you can do a bunch of mods on it, is a Mega Daddy. And this is one that I actually used. I cut them down, so my Texas rig is literally that, like the weight goes right there. It's super compact, and then on some of these you'll see the flappers are pretty big. If I'm on a body of water where it's clear or I want a more subtle presentation, I will trim those down, even to the point where they look like those little antennas. So it's like 4 little floppy antennas, kind of like the tube tentacles, you know. This thing has caught me, this and the tube have probably caught me the most bedfish all around. Like, they're just successful. I have a lot of confidence in them, that probably helps, but they're good because they have the features that you're looking for. They're quivery, they're you know, at least this one is thin. The tube isn't so thin. This one has a nice thin body, so the hook comes out really easy. But they just work, dude. And the other thing too is colors. So colors, this is actually one of my favorites. This is Copperfield. What's nice with this is you get natural, you get that green, especially we're on greenish clear water, but then there's this whitish kind of hue to it, and I can see it on the bed. A lot of guys will throw white. I'll throw white to see what a fish is doing, but in the end, I've caught more fish using natural colors. It's a little harder to see the bait on the bed, but I think they react better to it because they actually think it's something trying to invade the bed. You got to play around with it, you know. That's just my perspective and my opinion. But your green pumpkins, like watermelon red, if your water's really clear, I tend to stay away from black and blue. What I'd rather do usually is I'll take something in green pumpkin and I'll dip it in chartreuse so it has some brightness to it. And once again, it's a good way to kind of see it on the bed for you. But that's my breakdown, dude. Bed fishing's fun. It's like a lot of fun, in contrast to what Bog thinks, because he's sitting there all tired and stuff. But bed fishing's a lot of fun because you go one-on-one with the fish and you see their behavior. And I think that's something, especially anglers that are interested in patterns, interested in learning what the fish do and why. It's that one moment, other than on the graph, where you can see what this fish is thinking, doing, reacting, like everything about it. And it's so intense because you're just watching, you're interacting with the fish directly, all in real time. It's such a cool deal. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I won't talk your ear off, but just remember, the spawn can happen quick, like real quick. You don't even see it coming. So be ready to make that transition from pre-spawn or staging kind of breaks to that shallow water. I know it's a ways off for a lot of you guys, but always be ready for that transition because it happens quick, and if you're on top of it, you can get first dibs, dude. And that usually means first dibs on bigs.